My name is Marisol Carter. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. By day, I'm a cashier at a grocery store. By night, I wait tables at a downtown diner. 2 jobs, 1 tiny apartment, no breaks. But when my parents called me saying we're about to lose the house, I didn't even hesitate. I wired them $7,500, every dollar I had saved over the last 3 years. They told me it saved the house, that without me, the family would have been ruined. I believed them. But 1 week later, I opened Facebook and froze. There they were, Mom, Dad, my cousin Kaylee, grinning in front of Cinderella's castle at Disney World. Everyone smiling. Everyone, except me. I realized then the mortgage wasn't the crisis. I was. Stay with me, because what I did after that trip changed everything. Comment below, what would you have done? And if you love seeing underdogs take their power back, like this video and subscribe. I thought giving up my savings would bring me closer to my parents. That maybe, finally, they'd see me as more than just the kid who never measured up to everyone else's expectations. But the night I handed over the envelope, Dad just cleared his throat, looked down at the kitchen table, and muttered, "Thanks, Marisol. We'll make it work." That was it. No hug. No real gratitude. No, you saved us. And Mom, Patrice, didn't even look up from her phone. She just flicked her wrist, like she was brushing away dust. "It's what family does," she said. "You shouldn't expect a parade." Her tone stung more than I wanted to admit. I wasn't expecting a parade, but maybe a thank you that felt like it meant something. Instead, it felt like I had just paid a bill at a restaurant, not saved my parents from losing their home. It wasn't the first time I felt invisible in that house. Growing up, my parents were obsessed with appearances. Everything had to look perfect, even if it was falling apart inside. The house was staged like a model home whenever neighbors came by, even if the fridge was half empty. They cared more about the Christmas light competition than whether I had enough for lunch money. If something was broken, it got hidden, not fixed. If something was ugly, it got painted over. And if someone, me, didn't fit the picture-perfect image, I got ignored. That night, after I left the house, I sat in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus and stared at the blank wall above my futon. I had given away everything I had, and in return, I got nothing. Still, I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe gratitude just wasn't their thing. Maybe this time would be different. The next weekend, they invited me over for Sunday dinner. I didn't want to go, but guilt won. I told myself they were stressed, that money problems made people act weird. When I walked in, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and fresh-baked rolls. Mom had set the dining room like it was Thanksgiving, candles, polished silverware, even folded napkins. For a second, my chest loosened. Maybe this was their way of thanking me. But then the front door swung open, and my Aunt Georgette strutted in. If you've ever met someone who can turn a compliment into an insult, that's Georgette. My mom's older sister. She was wearing a silk scarf like she'd just come back from Paris, even though everyone knew she spent her days at TJ Maxx. "Well, if it isn't little Miss Savior," she said, looking me up and down as she set her pies on the counter. "I hear you're the reason the house isn't foreclosed. How noble." Her eyes flicked to my shoes, scuffed flats from Goodwill. Then she smiked. "Shame you can't save enough to get yourself a decent apartment. Patrice tells me you're still in that box downtown. 1 bedroom, isn't it? With the peeling paint." Heat rushed to my face. I clenched my jaw, but I didn't say anything. That's the thing about my family. If you push back, you're too sensitive. Mom laughed like Georgette had cracked the world's funniest joke. Dad just kept carving the chicken. I sat through dinner, trying to swallow both the food and the humiliation. Every bite tasted like ashes. Then, as I carried plates into the kitchen, I heard it, a whisper. I froze. Mom's voice, sharp and low. "Well, now we can finally book it." My heart thudded. Book what? a payment, a contractor. Georgette's voice followed, dripping with glee. Oh, they'll never see it coming. They both laughed. I stood there in the kitchen, holding a plate so tight I thought it might crack. My ears burned. My stomach twisted. Book what? And why did it sound like I was the punchline? I didn't know it then, but that one overheard sentence was a thread that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. And the truth? It was worse than I ever imagined. The whisper about booking it haunted me for days. I tried to shake it off, but it gnawed at me every time I laid down in bed after a double shift. What were they booking? Why did it sound so secretive? I told myself I was being paranoid, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't let go. Something was wrong. A week later, I got my answer, and it hit me like a punch straight to the chest. It happened on a Thursday night. I had stopped by their house after work to drop off some mail that had been accidentally delivered to my apartment. My phone was almost dead, so I set it to charge in the living room while Mom and Aunt Georgette were gossiping in the kitchen. I sat down, scrolling. That's when a notification popped up. It wasn't even my phone that buzzed. It was Dad's, sitting on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a group chat message. At first, I wasn't paying attention until I saw the words, Disney itinerary update European castle airplane hash. My eyes snapped to the screen. I couldn't stop myself. Dad's phone unlocked with a lazy swipe. He never used a passcode, and suddenly, the whole group chat opened right in front of me. There were messages stacked on top of each other. Mom, Dad, Aunt Georgette, my cousin Kaylee, even Uncle Trevor, all of them laughing, dropping emojis, counting down the days. Hotel is confirmed. Deluxe suite. Can't wait for the fireworks show, smiling face with heart-shaped eyes. Did you see the character breakfast? Kaylee is going to love it. My throat closed. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I scrolled further, my stomach sinking lower with each line. Flight confirmations, hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, pictures of Magic Kingdom, all of it. And then I saw the passenger list for the flights. I read the names once, then again. My heart pounded louder with every beat. Ronald Carter, Patrice Carter, Kayleen Kneale, Aunt Georgette, Uncle Trevor, even his bratty son, who still owed me $50 from last summer. Everyone except me. I wasn't even in the group chat. They didn't just forget to tell me. They had built a whole secret world where I didn't exist. I felt sick. My chest burned like acid was eating through me. I had given them everything I had. $7,500. Money I could have used to fix my car, to pay my own rent without juggling late fees, to breathe for once. And what did they do with it? They used it to buy mousies and plane tickets. They used it to celebrate without me. I dropped the phone back on the table like it burned my skin. My whole body shook, my palms sweaty, my vision blurry with rage. I wanted to scream, to storm into the kitchen and demand answers, but my voice caught in my throat. All I could do was sit there, trembling, as the truth slammed into me over and over. I wasn't invited. I wasn't wanted. I was just the bank. And the worst part, they used my money to pay for it. The second I saw the Disney messages, I couldn't breathe. I waited until Aunt Georgette left the room. Then I stormed into the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Are you serious? My voice cracked. Disney World? You're all going to Disney World. Mom didn't even flinch. She set down her glass of wine and arched an eyebrow. Lower your voice. You sound hysterical. Dad looked between us, chewing the inside of his cheek. He didn't say a word. You begged me for money, I snapped. $7,500. You said it was for the mortgage. And now I find out you're flying to Disney with everyone but me. Mom smiked like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Disney isn't for everyone, Maricel. You'd be miserable. It's hot. It's crowded. You hate roller coasters. She waved her hand dismissively. We did you a favor. Her words sliced straight through me. My ears buzzed. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. You lied to me, I whispered. Dad finally sighed. His voice was low, weak, apologetic. Sweetheart, don't make this bigger than it is. You know your mom. She just wants everyone to have a good time. You'd understand if you thought about it. I stared at him, the man I had trusted enough to hand over every dime I had, and all I saw was cowardice. His eyes wouldn't even meet mine. You used my money, I said. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. You used my money to pay for it. Mom laughed, a sharp, cold laugh that echoed off the kitchen tiles. Oh, don't be dramatic. It all goes in the same pot. Family money is family money. That laugh lodged itself in my chest like a blade. I shoved my chair back, the legs screeching across the floor. The sound made both of them wince, but neither apologized. I was halfway to the door when Aunt Georgette's voice floated behind me. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, smaking. She leaned close enough for only me to hear. You'll never be more than the backup daughter, she whispered. The words landed harder than a slap. I froze, my whole body trembling. I could feel her breath on my ear, the smugness in her tone, the satisfaction dripping from every syllable. I wanted to cry. I wanted to break. But instead, I forced my tears back down. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Not one single tear. I tightened my fists, breathed through the rage boiling in my veins, and made myself a silent promise. If they thought I was weak, if they thought I'd just hand the money and let them laugh in my face, they didn't know me at all. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to make them regret it. I hadn't spoken to my parents in a week. After the kitchen confrontation, after Aunt Georgette's poisonous whisper, I decided I needed space. My phone lit up with texts from Mom, short, sharp messages telling me I was overreacting. Dad sent one half-hearted "love you, kiddo." I didn't answer. Then, out of nowhere, my cousin Kaylee messaged me. Kaylee, the golden child, the one they gave everything to, college tuition, cars, vacations. Meanwhile, I got a good luck when I begged for help with my student loans. Her name flashing on my screen made my stomach tighten. Hey, you okay? I didn't reply. I stayed at it, my thumb hovering. Then another message came. I didn't know they were gonna leave you out. I swear. I feel awful. If you want, I can try to sneak you in. Maybe tell the airline you had a separate booking. I'll help you figure it out. I sat there in my tiny apartment, the heat from my radiator making the room stifling, my phone glowing in my hand. For the first time in weeks, I felt a crack of light break through the darkness. Kaylee, of all people, was on my side. I called her. She answered in one ring. Her voice was low, conspiratorial. Maricel, listen. I know Mom and Aunt Georgette are being awful. I don't agree with them. If you show up at the airport the day of the flight, I'll get you through check-in. Just act casual. I'll handle it. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, my pulse racing. You'd really do that for me? She sighed. I don't want you left out, okay? I know it's not fair. You helped them, and they should have been grateful. Just trust me. The sincerity in her voice almost made me cry. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like someone saw me. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. I even let myself remember when we were kids, back before everything changed. Summers at Grandma's lake house in Michigan. Fireflies glowing over the dock. Kaylee and I whispering secrets under the covers. Back then, we were inseparable. Back then, I thought she'd always be my sister in everything but blood. But then the favoritism started. My parents paid her tuition at Ohio State while I worked nights just to afford community college. They co-signed for her car while I took the bus through freezing Columbus winters. Every time, I told myself it wasn't her fault. It was them. She just got lucky. Now, for the first time in years, it felt like maybe the girl I used to know was still in there. I clung to that feeling like a lifeline. For a week, I let myself hope. I even daydreamed about it. Showing up at the airport, Kaylee grinning as she waved me past the counter. Mom's face falling when she saw me at the gate. Dad too stunned to speak. It was petty, but it was the only dream that made me smile. Then it shattered. 3 days later, Kaylee posted on Instagram. The first photo was her in Minnie Mouse ears, pouting playfully with Cinderella's castle behind her. The caption, "Dreams do come true. Thank you Mom and Dad for the all-expenses-paid trip European Castle Sparkles #blessed #family first." I scrolled. My heart sank with every swipe. Photo after photo. Kaylee holding a churro. Kaylee in front of the fireworks. Kaylee on Splash Mountain with Mom and Dad screaming behind her. Every post tagged, #family trip. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. She hadn't snuck me in. She hadn't even tried. She had lied straight to my face. And the worst part, the captions weren't just bragging, they were taunting. All expenses paid. She wanted me to know it was my money that made her Disney dream possible. My phone buzzed with comments under her post. Best cousin trip ever. So happy for you guys. You have the best family. I couldn't breathe. I threw my phone onto the couch and pressed my fists to my temples. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in on me. I had trusted her. I had believed her. Kaylee wasn't on my side. She was in on it the whole time. The Monday after Kaylee's posts went viral in our family group chats, I dragged myself into the cafe for my morning shift. The air smelled like burnt espresso and caramel syrup. Normally, I love that smell. It meant routine, safety, something predictable in my otherwise unpredictable life. But that morning, it felt sickeningly sweet, like it was mocking me. I tied my apron, adjusted the knot behind my back, and pulled my hair into a bun. I kept my head down, hoping no one would notice the heaviness dragging my every move. I could survive the day if I just kept moving, if I just poured lattes and wiped tables without thinking about the smiling faces in Kaylee's posts. Of course, the universe had other plans. Marisol, you've got to see this. It was Jenna, my coworker, waving her phone at me from behind the counter. She was young, 19, with bleached blonde hair and an endless supply of gossip. She shoved the screen right under my nose before I could brace myself. There it was, a perfect, polished photo of my entire family, Mom, Dad, Aunt Georgette, Uncle Paul, Kaylee, even her little brother, in front of Mickey Mouse himself. Their faces were glowing, their smiles wide, their arms slung over each other like they'd never known a bad day in their lives. Mickey's giant gloved hands were raised in a celebratory pose, like he was the master of ceremonies at their betrayal. The caption read, "Family Magic, Disney Dreams, Family Over Everything." My throat went dry. Jenna giggled. "Isn't that cute? I didn't know your family went to Disney. God, I'm so jealous. Who even gets trips like that paid for them? Goals." I forced a laugh that came out sounding more like a cough. "Yeah, cute." I turned back to the espresso machine, gripping the portafilter so hard my knuckles whitened. She didn't notice. She just kept scrolling through the photos. "Wow, your cousin is so photogenic. Look at this one. OMG, the castle at night? Unreal. You're so lucky." Lucky. The word burned in my ears. I swallowed hard and focused on tamping the espresso, the hiss of steam filling the silence I desperately needed. But then, as if the day hadn't already handed me enough humiliation, it got worse. Around noon, during the lunch rush, a customer leaned over the counter. He was a regular, middle-aged, balding, always wore a blue polo tucked into khakis. He ordered his usual iced coffee, then smiled at me like we were old friends. "So, Marisol, why didn't you go with your family? So all those Disney pics on Facebook. Looked like fun." The word slammed into me like a punch. I froze, the plastic cup slipping slightly in my hand. My brain scrambled for an answer, but my tongue refused to move. The customers behind him leaned in, curious. Jenna glanced over, eyebrows raised. "Why didn't you go?" How could I say the truth? Because they stole from me? Because I was nothing but the backup daughter. Because I was the ATM who paid for the magic but wasn't welcome to experience it. Instead, I muttered something pathetic like, "Oh, I had to work." The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Shame. Bet it would have been a trip of a lifetime. You should have called off. Family first, right?" Family first. I plastered on a smile, slid his iced coffee across the counter, and moved on to the next order. But my chest was tight, like a band was cinched around my ribs. My hands trembled as I frothed milk, and more than once I caught myself staring into the foam, zoning out, imagining my parents laughing with Kaylee on Main Street while I was stuck wiping spilled frappuccinos off the counter. By the time my shift ended, my legs felt like lead. I trudged home, collapsed onto my couch, and buried my face in my hands. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Just silence. That night, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity gnawed at me. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally calling to apologize. I answered. Her voice was sharp, annoyed. "Maricel, I don't appreciate you sulking like this. You're making drama out of nothing." I sat up straight. Drama? You lied to me. You told me the mortgage was behind, that you needed my help, and then you used my money to fund a Disney vacation without even inviting me. Her laugh was short and cold. "Oh, stop it. Don't make everything about you. We wanted to give Kaylee something special before she starts her new job. You know she's been under stress. Besides, Disney isn't for everyone. You'd be miserable there. Too crowded, too noisy." The word stung. Miserable. I had been dreaming of going there since I was a kid, but we never could afford it. And now, when it was finally possible, she decided I wasn't even worth the chance? "Mom," I whispered, "you stole from me." Her sigh was loud in my ear. "Don't be selfish, Maricel. Families share. That's what we do. And if you keep making a big deal about money, you're just proving why we didn't invite you. You ruin everything." My chest ached. I wanted to scream, to shout, to throw the phone against the wall. But instead, I stayed quiet. "Grow up," she snapped, then hung up. I sat there, staring at the black screen, my hands trembling. Selfish. That word echoed over and over in my mind. How could she twist it like that? I had sacrificed everything for them, and now I was the selfish one. I felt something shift inside me that night. A quiet rage, simmering deep, waiting for the right moment to erupt. But before the rage came the truth. Because later that week, while checking some paperwork I still had from the mortgage crisis, I noticed something strange. The dates didn't line up. The letters my parents had shown me looked off, almost like they'd been printed at home. I pulled up the county records online. My hands shook as I typed in their address. The page loaded, and there it was, clear as day. Their mortgage had never been behind. Not once. Not even close. The $7,500 I gave them wasn't saving their house. It was funding their dream vacation. They had lied from the very beginning. It wasn't desperation. It was exploitation. And in that moment, staring at the glowing computer screen in my dark apartment, I realized something I would never forget. They hadn't just excluded me. They had robbed me. The Saturday after I uncovered the truth about the mortgage, I got the invitation I was dreading. A family barbecue. The kind where my parents pretended we were the picture of togetherness, where everyone else put on smiles so wide you could practically hear their jaws creak. I told myself I wouldn't go. I didn't owe them my presence. Not after what they'd done. But a sick part of me wanted to see them, to look them in the eyes, to confirm whether the cruelty I suspected was real or if maybe, just maybe, I was exaggerating it in my own head. So I went. The moment I walked into the backyard, I knew I'd made a mistake. The air smelled like charcoal and sweet barbecue sauce, but underneath it was that sour tang of smugness, the kind you can feel before anyone even opens their mouths. They were all there. Mom, Dad, Aunt Georgette, Uncle Paul, Kaylee, even her little brother, clustered around the picnic table. Red plastic cups clinked, beer bottles tapped, laughter spilled into the sticky summer air. And every single one of them was wearing something from Disney. Kaylee had on sequined Minnie Mouse ears. Aunt Georgette wore a shirt that said "Best Day Ever" in sparkly letters. My dad was in a faded gray t-shirt with Mickey's face plastered on the front, like he'd been 13 again. And my stepmom Patrice had gone all out, bright blue Spirit jersey with Walt Disney World stretched across the back, the sleeves still crisp like it had just come out of a bag. It was a parade of souvenirs, and I wasn't invited. "Oh, there she is," Aunt Georgette called, her voice dripping with fake cheer. She raised her cup in my direction. "Maricel, sweetheart, you should have come. Best trip ever. Shame some people don't fit in." The words hit me like ice water. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. But that day, it was sharper than ever. Everyone laughed. The sound of it grated, mingling with the clinking of glasses and the sizzle of burgers on the grill. It wasn't laughter like you hear in movies, warm and inclusive. No, this was laughter at my expense. I stood there frozen, the sun beating down on my shoulders, making the sweat trickle down my back. I wanted to walk away, to escape before they could slice me apart piece by piece. But I stayed rooted, staring at them, my jaw tight. Kaylee bounced up, her phone in hand. "Oh my God, look at this one," she squealed. She shoved the screen toward me without waiting for permission. It was a photo of her in front of the castle, holding a churro the size of her arm. She looked radiant, like she had the world at her feet. She turned the phone so the others could see. Honestly, best churro of my life. I swear, Disney food just hits different. Laughter again. Clinking bottles. The sound of ice rattling in cups. My dad slapped Uncle Paul on the back, and they both erupted into chuckles, the kind of easy joy that had never been reserved for me. And then came the knife twist. "Hey, honey," Patrice said, standing and reaching into a little Disney gift bag. She pulled out a tiny plastic trinket, pink and shiny, dangling from a silver ring, a Minnie Mouse keychain. She pressed it into my palm like she was doing me a favor. "There," she said sweetly. "Now it's like you were part of it too." The plastic burned against my skin, even though it was cool to the touch. My fingers curled around it instinctively, but not out of gratitude, out of rage. A keychain. They took my money. They lied to me. They excluded me. And then they handed me a cheap souvenir like I should thank them for it. I looked at her, at all of them. Their smiles, their smugness, their complete lack of shame. And in that moment, something snapped inside me. That was the exact moment I decided they'd regret underestimating me. I left that barbecue with the Minnie Mouse keychain clenched so tight in my fist it cut into my palm. The air outside smelled like smoke from the grill, but all I could smell was betrayal. My shoes crunched on the gravel of the driveway, and I told myself I wouldn't cry. Not anymore. They wanted me to feel small, and I had played into their hands long enough. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at that keychain sitting on my kitchen counter, and something in me shifted. I was done being the quiet daughter who bailed everyone out. I was done being invisible. If they could play games with my life and money, then I could play, too. I started small. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank app, and scrolled through transactions. My stomach turned with every line of spending. Charges I didn't make. Transfers I hadn't approved. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. I started taking screenshots, saving them into a folder I labeled Rainy Day. My hand trembled, not because I was scared, but because the realization was sinking in. I wasn't crazy. They really were using me. The next day, I called in sick at the cafe. My manager was annoyed, but I didn't care. I spent the entire day digging. I went to the library, pulled credit reports, and printed them out. My hands shook as the printers spit out page after page, each one another nail in the coffin of their lies. Dad's pension listed, Mom's side hustle Etsy shop with thousands flowing in, more than she ever admitted at Sunday dinners when she claimed she was barely scraping by. And yet, When the mortgage fell behind, it was my $7,500 they demanded. Late that night, I heard my phone buzz. A message from Dad. Hey, can we talk tomorrow? For a moment, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he was finally going to be the father I always needed him to be. I stayed at the screen for a long time before typing back, sure. 6 p.m. after work. The next evening, we sat on the porch swing at their house. The air was heavy with the smell of honeysuckle and cut grass. He rubbed his hands together nervously, like he didn't know how to start. Finally, he cleared his throat. Look, Marisol, I know things have been rough lately. Your mom and we didn't mean to hurt you. I swallowed hard, waiting. He kept going, avoiding my eyes. Next time we do something like that, you'll come with us. I promise. It won't be like this again. The words hung in the air like smoke. For a split second, I felt something warm rise in my chest. Hope. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe, finally, I wasn't just the backup daughter. But then I caught it, a small snake tugging at the corner of his mouth when he thought I wasn't looking. That look broke the spell. Later that night, I sat at their kitchen counter, waiting for Mom to finish a shower so I could grab the jacket I'd left in the living room. That's when I noticed the envelope on the counter. It was thick, with a dealership logo peeking out the side. I shouldn't have touched it. I knew I shouldn't. But my hands moved on their own. Inside was paperwork, financing documents, my dad's signature at the bottom of every page. And then, the words that made my blood run cold, co-signer, Marisol Carter. I flipped through the pages in disbelief, my chest tightening with each line. Loan amount, $42,000. Vehicle, 2022 Lexus RX. Primary buyer, Kaylee Thompson. My cousin. The same cousin who had laughed at me with mini ears on her head just days ago. And there it was in black and white, my name, my credit, my identity tied to her shiny new car. The realization hit me like a freight train. My $7,500 hadn't just disappeared into thin air. It had been the down payment for her luxury car. I slammed the envelope shut, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I shoved it back exactly where I'd found it, my heart pounding in my ears. As I walked out into the night air, the weight of it pressed down on me. My dad's empty promises. My mom's manipulative smile. Kaylee's smug face. They weren't done using me. And that was their biggest mistake. When I walked out of my parents' house that night, the Lexus paperwork burned in my mind like a brand. I felt stripped raw, exposed. They hadn't just used my money. They had signed my name onto something that could ruin my credit, my future, my entire chance of independence. Every step I took back to my car felt heavier than the last. By the time I slammed the door and sat gripping the wheel, I realized something. I couldn't do this alone anymore. That thought haunted me for days. At work, steaming milk and pouring lattes, my hands moved on autopilot while my mind raced. I had no lawyer, no money for one, no power, and if I went to the police with nothing but a gut feeling, they'd laugh in my face. I needed someone who knew the rules of the game, someone who could show me how to play without getting caught. That's when I thought of him, Deacon Miller. We'd grown up 2 houses apart in Columbus. Back then, he'd been the lanky kid with glasses who used to sneak comic books into Sunday school. He'd always been sharp, the kind of kid who could dismantle a whole argument just by tilting his head and asking the right question. I hadn't seen him in years, but I'd heard through a mutual friend he was working as a paralegal downtown. I hesitated for 2 days before texting him. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, deleting and retyping the same words until finally, I just wrote, "Hey, long time no see. Can we talk? It's important." He answered in minutes. "Sure. Coffee at Stoff's tomorrow? Noon." When I walked into the cafe, my stomach knotted. He was already there, leaning against the counter, taller than I remembered, his glasses replaced with contacts, his suit a little rumpled but respectable. When he saw me, his face lit up. "Marisol Carter," he said, his voice warm, like we'd spoken yesterday. It's been, what, 7 years? I forced a smile. Something like that. We sat down with our drinks. I didn't bother with small talk. My heart was pounding too hard. I told him everything. The $7,500, the Disney trip, the Lexus. Every word spilled out like poison I'd been holding in too long. He didn't laugh. He didn't even look surprised. He just listened, his jaw tightening slightly, his pen scratching notes on a napkin. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a slow breath. Okay, first thing you need to understand. Paper trail is everything. Without it, you're just a kid complaining about her parents. With it, you're the victim of fraud. Fraud, I repeated. Identity theft. Misappropriation of funds. Pick your flavor, but nothing sticks unless you've got proof. His words hit me like cold water. Proof. Screenshots weren't enough. I needed receipts, documents, emails, things they couldn't argue away with smooth words and guilt trips. I nodded slowly. So I start collecting. You start building a case, he corrected. Piece by piece. Quietly. Don't let them know you're onto them. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest spark of control return to me. But later that night, lying awake in bed, another thought gnawed at me. This was my family, my own parents. Was I really about to tear them down like criminals? What kind of daughter does that? I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my chest heavy. Part of me wanted to believe Dad's promise, that one day I'd be included, that one day I'd be enough. Maybe this was all a horrible misunderstanding. Maybe if I just waited, if I just stayed quiet, things would change. But then I remembered the smirk on his face when he promised me next time. The Minnie Mouse keychain dropped in my hand like a consolation prize. The Lexus paperwork with my name signed without consent. The humiliation of watching my cousin flaunt a life I had unknowingly paid for. No, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. 2 nights later, I logged into our old family email account. Mom had always been sloppy with passwords, reusing the same 3 combinations for everything. I guessed it on the 3rd try. What I found made my skin crawl. Folders labeled mortgage documents, insurance, and then vacation fund. My hand trembled as I clicked. Email after email between Mom, Dad, Aunt Georgette, and even Kaylee, talking about allocating contributions, pooling resources, keeping Marisol out of the loop. I scrolled until I hit the most recent thread. Subject line: Cruise 2023, final confirmation. The words blurred as I read. Caribbean, all-inclusive, suites booked, flights paid. And then I saw it. Funded primarily from Marisol's contributions. She doesn't need to know. I slammed my laptop shut so hard the sound echoed in the apartment. My heart raced. They weren't just done with Disney. They were already planning their next escape, this time on the ocean, sipping cocktails under the sun while I scrubbed coffee stains out of aprons. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the city noise faint outside my window, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the powerless daughter anymore. I felt like the storm they had created, and they were already planning a Caribbean cruise next. I remember the exact moment when I let myself breathe again. It was after that night of finding the emails, when the shock still buzzed in my veins, but Deacon's words echoed like a lifeline. Paper trail is everything. For the first time, I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't powerless. I had a plan. And in those early days, Deacon felt like the only person on my side. We met up often after that, sometimes in his office lobby, sometimes at late-night diners where the fluorescent lights made everyone look pale and tired. He'd sit across from me, tapping a pen against his notebook, coaching me on what to look for: bank statements, signatures, tax forms. Every detail mattered, he reminded me, because fraud isn't about feelings, it's about evidence. I trusted him. I shouldn't have. The first red flag should have been how casually he brushed off my hesitation about digging too deep. They're your parents. Yes, he said once over a plate of fries, but they've already crossed the line. You either fight back or you roll over. And I don't think you're the rollover type. His grin was sharp, a little too knowing, but I ignored it. I wanted to believe he was rooting for me, not just enjoying the show. One afternoon, I dropped by the courthouse where he worked. I had some documents to give him, and he told me to swing by after his lunch break. I was early, so I waited near the stairwell, scrolling on my phone to pass the time. That's when I heard it, his voice, light and teasing, drifting from around the corner. At first, I didn't think much of it. Deacon was social, friendly with everyone. But then I caught the name. Kaylee. My blood ran cold. I froze, pressing myself back against the wall. His voice was low, intimate in a way I had never heard him use with me. No, she totally bought it. She thinks I'm helping her. Baby, you should have seen her face when I told her about the paper trail. She's practically doing the work for us. My stomach lurched. My ears rang. Kaylee's laugh came through the phone, faint but unmistakable. I'd grown up with that laugh. It was the soundtrack of every spoiled victory she'd ever had. You're terrible, she giggled. Keep her busy. I want her scrambling. She always wanted to play detective. Let her. The more she digs, the more pathetic she looks. Deacon's chuckle was soft, conspiratorial. Don't worry, babe. She'll never see it coming. The phone clicked off. His footsteps echoed down the hall. I stayed hidden, my body rigid, my fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. In that instant, the air shifted. The ground beneath me cracked open. Deacon wasn't my ally. He wasn't even neutral. He was Kaylee's, her secret boyfriend, and he had been feeding her my every move. I wanted to storm out and confront him right then, to scream, to throw the stack of receipts I'd been collecting in his face. But I forced myself to stay still, my breath shallow, my heart hammering against my ribs. Because suddenly, I understood I wasn't just dealing with parents who exploited me. I was up against an entire machine of betrayal. I walked out of that building in a daze. The documents in my bag felt heavier now, like bricks I'd been hauling for nothing. The city noise blurred into static. I couldn't even cry. The betrayal was too sharp, too layered. My so-called friend, my blood, together. That night, I scrolled TikTok in silence, numb fingers flicking past videos of dances and recipes, until one stopped me cold. Kaylee. She was in her room, ring light glowing, hair perfect, smile smug. The caption read, "Some people don't know their place. Snitches will never be family." Her voice, dripping with mock sympathy. You know what's sad? When someone thinks they are the main character, but really, they are just background. Like, sweetie, stop embarrassing yourself. The comments exploded with laughing emojis and inside jokes. Most of her friends had no idea who she was talking about, but I did. Every word was for me. Heat rose in my chest, a deep burn that swallowed humiliation, pain, and fear all at once. She thought she had outplayed me. She thought she'd humiliated me for the last time. But watching her gloat on a platform she thought was hers alone, I realized something far more important. I couldn't trust anyone. Not Deacon, not Dad, not Mom. But I didn't need to trust them. I just needed to outsmart them. And from that moment on, I knew exactly how I'd start. I had to change tactics. The sting of discovering Deacon's betrayal and Kaylee's smug TikTok burned in my chest. But I knew one thing for sure. If I showed them I was hate, they would win. And I refused to give them that satisfaction. So, I did the unthinkable. I smiled at them. I acted like nothing had happened. I pretended to forgive. It started small. When Mom asked me to help organize some receipts for taxes, I nodded sweetly and stacked them neatly in a folder, all while making my own copies on the printer at work. When Dad mentioned he needed help setting up an online bill pay account, I sat beside him, clicking through screens, pretending to be the dutiful daughter, while memorizing every account number that flashed across the screen. Kaylee was trickier. She loved attention, loved being catered to. So, I started bringing her little things, an extra coffee from my cafe job, a lip gloss I pretended I didn't like anymore, even a necklace I'd tucked away years ago. She took them with that same smug smile, thinking I was desperate for her approval. In reality, I was building a cover story. If anyone questioned why I was hanging around or why I knew so much about their finances, I could point to these acts of peace and say, "See? I was trying." But behind the scenes, every day was a breadcrumb trail. Trips to the courthouse to drop off papers that were really my excuse to sit in the public records room, scrolling through property filings, debt records, and pension forms. Nights spent printing duplicates, tucking them into a binder I kept under my bed, labeled in big letters, recipes. No one in my family would ever look twice at it. And yet, even as I played the role of their fool, cracks formed in my armor. One night, I sat at my desk, the glow of my lamp the only light in the room. Pages of copied statements and receipts surrounded me like a fortress, but instead of feeling strong, I felt hollow. My pen tapped against the desk as doubt clawed at me. Was I really about to tear down my own family? Was I any better than them if I stooped to this level? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, whispering into the quiet, "What if I can't do this? What if they win?" The silence offered no comfort, but then I thought of that group chat, of the Disney tickets bought with my money, of Kaylee's TikToks nay. And suddenly, the doubt turned to fuel. So, I pushed forward. The breakthrough came when I realized I couldn't just expose them. I had to trap them in their own lies. Paper trails were powerful, yes, but people ignored them until they exploded into consequences. I needed something undeniable, something official, something they couldn't laugh off at a barbecue. That's when I found it, an LLC. I learned that anyone could file one, link it to expenses, and establish ownership. My parents had been funneling money through side hustles and household expenses for years, things they pretended were sacrifices but were really luxuries for Kaylee. What if I tied those false expenses directly to myself, legally? What if I became the name on the paper, the one the receipts pointed back to? It was a risk, a huge one, but it was also the perfect weapon. I stayed up late that night, my laptop humming, fingers shaking as I filled out the online registration form. Every click felt like crossing a line I could never return from. Name, address, filings, each piece sliding into place like gears in a machine I was building from scratch. When I hit submit, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Just like that, the LLC existed. Just like that, their lies had a new owner, me. I closed my laptop and stared at the binder of receipts, the fake peace offerings, the years of humiliation stacked against me. For the first time, the scales didn't feel so uneven, and I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, if this worked, the empire of lies would collapse. Olive Garden smelled like garlic bread and betrayal. That's the only way I can describe it. I walked in and immediately felt the weight of their laughter ripple across the room. My family had taken over 2 long tables pushed together, the kind of arrangement you'd expect for a birthday party or reunion. Only this wasn't a celebration. It was another stage where I'd play the unwanted extra. The sound of clinking wine glasses, the scrape of silverware against porcelain plates, the over-the-top cheer in their voices, it was all a performance. They were talking over each other about the next trip. Caribbean, maybe, or Vegas. Aunt Georgette was loudly weighing the pros and cons of beachwear versus sequins, as though the whole restaurant needed her input. Kaylee sat across the table in a silky pink dress that looked like it cost more than my rent. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her drink with that smug grin glued to her face. Every so often, she'd glance at me, the corners of her lips twitching like she was in on a joke I wasn't. Fake smiles surrounded me. I could feel them pressing in, like a spotlight meant to humiliate. My stepmom clutched her wine glass, her laugh sharp and deliberate, making sure the entire table heard how funny she found the idea of family adventures. My dad sat beside her, nodding vaguely, like a man who'd already handed over control of his dignity years ago. I tried to breathe evenly, but my chest tightened. My hands itched against the strap of my bag where the folder rested. That folder was everything: the months of receipts, the screenshots, the proof of stolen money, the LLC registration. It was heavy with more than paper. It carried the weight of every insult, every dismissal. Every night I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't enough. The server came by, balancing a tray of breadsticks and salad bowls. The table erupted in cheers as if breadsticks were gold bars. Kaylee rolled her eyes and snapped her fingers for more ranch. I just sat there, pulse pounding, watching the condensation slide down my water glass. I reminded myself, not yet. Timing mattered. My dad finally leaned toward me halfway through the meal, his voice low, as though the other table chatter might cover it. "You're awfully quiet tonight, Maricel," he said, almost kindly. "Almost. Everything okay?" I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd once admired, the one who taught me how to ride a bike and told me to never back down from bullies, now avoided my eyes. His fork twirled pasta absently, his voice hollow. He didn't want me okay. He wanted me silent. I forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just listening." And I was listening. To Aunt Georgette bragging about the Disney souvenirs she'd bought. To my stepmom describing the magical breakfast with Mickey like it was her crowning achievement. To Kaylee loudly whispering that maybe next time we shouldn't even mention it to Maricel. She gets so sensitive. Every word fueled me. Every chuckle was gasoline poured on the fire I carried inside. The moment arrived when my stepmom pulled out her phone and waved it around, showing pictures of the family at Disney. "Look at this one," she said, turning the screen toward me, her smirk sharp. "Isn't it sweet? Family is everything." Something snapped. I pushed my chair back slowly, the scrape of wood against tile cutting through their noise. Heads turned, conversation stilled. My heart thundered, but my voice came out steady when I said, "You're right. Family is everything." Which is why it's time we talk about what kind of family we really are. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The weight of it in my hand was almost electric. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. From release. I'd waited for this. Kaylee laughed lightly, tossing her hair. "What's this? Story time? Don't tell me you're keeping a diary, Maricel." I ignored her. My gaze swept across the table, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. "For months, you've all treated me like the outsider, the charity case, the girl who doesn't deserve a seat at the table. But I've been paying attention, and I've been keeping track." My stepmom's smile faltered. My dad froze, fork halfway to his mouth. I opened the folder and let the papers spill onto the table. Bank statements, screenshots, notarized copies of my LLC, receipts with their names circled in red ink. The pile spread across the plates and breadsticks like an infection no one could ignore. "This," I said, my voice cutting through the silence, "is every dollar you took, every lie you told, every time you smiled at me while you stole behind my back." Aunt Georgette scoffed, reaching for a breadstick as though the confrontation were nothing but a nuisance. "What on earth are you babbling about now?" I picked up one page and read aloud. "Mortgage payment, $7,500. Paid by me. 2 weeks later, a flight to Disney World. Not in your names, of course, but I traced the booking. Paid from the same account. My money." The color drained from my stepmom's face. She set her wine glass down carefully, too carefully. "That's not how it looks." "Oh, it's exactly how it looks," I cut in. My voice shook now, but with fury, not weakness. "You didn't need that money. The mortgage was never behind. You used me like an ATM. And when I confronted you, you laughed in my face." The table was silent, except for the faint clink of Kaylee's manicured nails tapping against her glass. She smirked at me, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, so dramatic. I slammed the folder shut, the sound echoing. My eyes locked onto hers. "Dramatic? This isn't drama, Kaylee. This is fraud, and I have every receipt to prove it." For the first time all night, the smug mask slipped. I straightened, pushing the folder toward the center of the table. I'm done being your scapegoat. I'm done being the backup daughter. Tonight, everything changes. The room felt like it held its breath. My dad, still frozen mid-bite, finally lowered his fork. His eyes darted from the papers to my face, confusion and fear colliding in his expression. And that's when it happened. That's when Dad's fork froze midair. The silence after my father's fork froze was deafening. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they would take a breath, look at the papers in front of them, and realize the damage they had done. But I should have known better. My family didn't do shame. They did deflection. They did denial. And they did it loudly. My stepmom was the first to break. Her voice rose like a siren, slicing through the hushed restaurant. Ungrateful, she snapped, her wineglass rattling as she slammed it onto the table. Red liquid sloshed over the rim and stained the white tablecloth, spreading like blood. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us? By ambushing us in public. Her words cracked the dam. Aunt Georgette stood up so fast her chair screeched backward. This is exactly why nobody wants you around, Marisol. Always with the drama, always playing the victim. You should be thanking us for even letting you sit here tonight. Her voice carried across the Olive Garden, and I noticed heads turning from nearby tables. Strangers were watching our family unravel, forks poised, breadsticks suspended in midair. I could feel my face heating, but I didn't shrink. I sat taller, my hand pressed firmly on the folder, my anchor in the storm. Dad didn't say a word. His hands hovered near his plate, his eyes darting between me and my stepmom. The man who once defended me at soccer games, who once told me he'd always have my back, sat paralyzed now, his mouth opening and closing without a single sound coming out. Kaylee leaned forward, her tone sweet but venomous. Everyone, calm down, she said, pretending to be the peacemaker. Then her gaze landed on me, sharp and cold. Look at her. She's jealous. That's all this is. She couldn't stand that we had a good time without her, so she invented some big conspiracy. Do you really think she has the brains to understand all this paperwork? She gestured dismissively at the pile of documents. The table buzzed with murmurs, nods, agreement. They wanted to believe her. They wanted me to be the unstable, bitter outsider. That role was easier for them to accept. I took a slow breath, my hands trembling slightly as I opened the folder again. My voice was quiet but steady, slicing through their noise. I'm not jealous. I'm prepared. I pulled out 2 envelopes and slid them across the table. These aren't just papers. These are copies of reports I already filed with the mortgage company and the pension board. They'll be investigating where the money came from, where it went, and who benefited from it. And when they follow the trail, every single one of you sitting here will be caught in the mess you made. The words dropped like stones into water. For the first time, there was no laughter, no smug smirks, no deflection, just stunned faces. My stepmom's jaw tightened, her eyes flickering with panic before she masked it again. Kaylee's smile faltered. Aunt Georgette made a strangled noise, grabbed her purse, and stormed toward the door, muttering curses under her breath. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. He leaned back, his face pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. Still, he said nothing. Not one word in my defense, not even a denial. Silence, his favorite weapon. I stood, tucking the folder back into my bag. My heart pounded, but my voice came out clear and calm. You thought I'd always stay quiet. You thought I'd keep playing the backup daughter. But I've been watching, and I've been learning. And now, everything you built on lies is about to go up in smoke. I didn't wait for their response. I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving their stunned faces behind. Because I knew the truth. The fallout had only just begun. The first call came 3 days later. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, scrolling through job listings on my cracked phone screen, when I heard my dad's voice on the voicemail. It was shaky, almost unrecognizable. He said the mortgage company had launched an audit. Something about discrepancies, accounts not adding up, payments that didn't match records. His tone wasn't angry like it usually was. It was scared. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the powerless daughter. I felt like the one holding the strings. Word traveled fast in our neighborhood. Columbus wasn't the kind of city where gossip stayed quiet for long. The Disney trip, the money trail, the flag charges, it all spilled out like gasoline, and people couldn't wait to strike a match. Within a week, everyone knew that my parents had dipped into mystery funds to pay for their magical vacation. The irony was almost poetic. They wanted to look like the perfect picture postcard family smiling with Mickey Mouse. Instead, they became the cautionary tale whispered about in church parking lots and grocery store lines. I knew it had spread when my coworker at the cafe slid me her phone, eyes wide. "Is this your family?" she whispered. There it was, a local Facebook moms group post, screenshots of the mortgage complaint attached, comments flooding in by the dozens. People who had once envied my stepmom's staged family photos were now calling her a fraud. The same neighbors who once fawned over Kaylee's new car were sharing laughing emojis under every thread. I should have felt satisfied right then. But revenge has a way of demanding more. The Disney charges were flagged officially not long after. My parents' credit card company froze the account. They were told an investigation was underway. Fraud, misuse of funds, whatever you wanted to call it. The photos from their dream trip now looked like evidence exhibits. My stepmom, who lived for validation, couldn't show her face without someone asking slyly, "So how was Disney? Was it worth it?" The real gut punch came for Aunt Georgette. She prided herself on being the queen of her HOA committee. She was the one who measured neighbors' lawns, handed out violation slips, bragged about how her word was law in that cul-de-sac. When the gossip leaked, the other board members turned on her fast. She was voted out after a single heated meeting. Her voice, once booming at every neighborhood gathering, was reduced to bitter muttering. Watching her lose the power she lorded over others was almost sweeter than I imagined. And Kaylee. Oh, Kaylee. The golden girl. The princess who could do no wrong. She posted selfies for weeks in that luxury car like it was her throne. But the night I saw the tow truck parked outside their house, the flashing lights bouncing against the windows, I swear I almost laughed out loud. The repossession crew wiped quick, hooking the car up while Kaylee ran outside barefoot, screaming into the dark. I watched from the end of the street, my hoodie pulled up, heart racing with something between adrenaline and justice. She begged them to stop, shouting that it was all a mistake, but no one listened. The car was gone before midnight, and her cries echoed into silence. For once, I wasn't the one left out. I wasn't the one watching from the sidelines. They were, but the biggest blow was yet to come. My father, silent, avoidant, always choosing the easy way out, couldn't avoid this storm. One evening, he called me over. I half expected him to yell, to guilt-trip me, to try to spin the narrative like he always had. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, papers spread out in front of him. His voice was low when he finally said it. "I signed off on the car loan with your money, Maricel." The words cut deeper than I expected. I had already known. I had already seen the proof. But hearing him say it, hearing him admit that he chose Kaylee over me, that he let my sacrifice fund her joyride, it was like being stabbed and branded all at once. "I didn't know what else to do," he mumbled. "She needed it. Patrice said it would help. I thought we could fix it later." Fix it later. That was his answer to everything. Letting my stepmom run the show. Letting Kaylee drain him dry. Let him sit on the sidelines while pretending it was all out of his hands. I looked at him across the table. His face was lined, tired, smaller than I remembered. For a split second, I saw the dad who used to cheer for me at school plays, who once carried me on his shoulders at the county fair. And then that image shattered, replaced with the man who had sold me out for the approval of everyone else in his life. He wanted forgiveness in that silence. He wanted me to soften, to tell him I understood. But I didn't. Instead, I stood. I walked to the door, my bag over my shoulder. I felt his eyes on me, waiting, hoping. And then I turned back, staring straight into him, into the decades of betrayal, the layers of lies, the favoritism that hollowed me out until I barely recognized myself. I didn't forgive you, I said, my voice steady, cold, final, and I never would. The first night in my apartment, I sat on the floor with a takeout pizza and a folding chair I bought at Goodwill. No designer furniture, no shiny car in the driveway, no fake perfect life staged for social media. Just me, 4 blank walls, and the sound of my own breathing filling the quiet. And for the first time in years, it felt like freedom. The space was small, barely a 1-bedroom, with creaky pipes and a stubborn radiator that clicked in the middle of the night. But it was mine. Every bill was mine. Every plate, every pillow, every piece of chipped silverware was mine. No one could take it away. No one could dangle it over my head. After years of being the overlooked kid, the disposable one, I finally had something solid under my feet. I walked through the room slowly, fingers brushing along the freshly painted walls. They smelled faintly of new beginnings, a mix of paint and dust that clung to my hands. The sunlight through the blinds hit my face, warm and steady. For once, there was no shouting from the kitchen, no laughter at my expense, no clinking glasses meant to remind me I didn't belong. Just silence, and it was beautiful. But silence leaves room for thoughts, too, and they came rushing in. The truth is, I got what I wanted. Justice, revenge, payback for every birthday forgotten, every dollar stolen, every time Kaylee's wants were prioritized over my needs. Their empire of lies collapsed, just like I planned. But what I didn't plan for was how empty it would feel to know that my family, the people who were supposed to be my foundation, were gone. Not by accident, not by fate, by my own hand. I thought about Dad, the way his fork froze mid-air when I laid those documents down. I thought about his confession, the weight in his voice when he admitted what he'd done. I thought about Mom's face, twisted with rage, calling me ungrateful while refusing to admit her own betrayal. I thought about Kaylee's scream when the tow truck took her car, and Aunt Georgette's fury when the HOA stripped her of her power. I dismantled them piece by piece, and now there was nothing left between us but ash. Some nights, when the apartment was too quiet, I'd wonder if maybe I had gone too far. If maybe a daughter should forgive, no matter what. If maybe I should have given Dad one more chance to choose me. But then I'd remember the Minnie Mouse keychain they gave me like a pity prize, the vacations they took while I stayed home, the loans signed in my name without my consent. I'd remember every single time I was left out, left behind, or left holding the bill. And then the guilt faded. Because the truth was simple, they built this fire themselves. I just stopped standing in it. One morning, I caught myself in the mirror before leaving for work. My reflection was calm, steady, even proud. My smile wasn't forced. It wasn't plastered on for anyone else. It was just mine. No tears left. No begging left. No waiting for them to love me the way they should have. Just me, whole for the first time. And when people whispered now, because of course they did, small towns never stop whispering, they called me selfish, too harsh, cold. I used to flinch at those words, used to let them sink into my skin like poison. But now, I just laugh. When they call me selfish now, I say, voice steady as steel, I just say, at least I paid my own way. So tell me, was I too harsh? Or did they deserve every bit of it?